There are some stories on the internet that feel fake immediately. And then there are stories that feel dangerous. Stories that spread quietly from person to person. Stories people swear they encountered long before they ever heard the name attached to them. Stories that seem less like fiction and more like fragmented memories pulled from nightmares that humanity somehow shares. Tonight's story belongs to one of the internet's most infamous creatures, a pale humanoid figure, hairless, starving, crawling on all fours through dark hallways, watching people sleep. It is called the Rake. Witnesses describe it as something between a naked man and a massive hairless dog. Its limbs are too long. Its movements are unnatural. It crouches at the foot of beds. It whispers in strange voices during the middle of the night. And when it attacks, it uses massive clawed hands to tear victims apart. But according to legend, death is not always the worst outcome. Because those who survive encounters with the Rake are often left psychologically destroyed by what they saw. Unable to sleep, unable to explain what happened, unable to forget its face staring at them from the darkness. Reports of similar creatures appear across 4 continents, some connected to ancient spirits, others to cryptids, and some associated with what modern folklore calls a flesh pedestrian. But no matter the name, the descriptions remain disturbingly similar. Pale skin, sunken eyes, long claws, and behavior that feels almost intelligent, almost human. The earliest supposed account dates back to a mariner's log from 1691. And ever since then, people have claimed the creature never stopped hunting. Tonight, witches and wanderers, lock your doors, check the corners of your room, and try not to look too long into the dark. Because tonight, we meet the Rake. Hello, and welcome back, witches and wanderers, to the Morbid Witch Podcast, where we explore myths, folklore, urban legends, cryptids, hauntings, and the darker stories hidden within human imagination. I'm your host, Kari Murders. Each episode, we step into tales of monsters, spirits, gods, killers, and creatures whispered about in the dark. Some legends are ancient, others are modern, but the fear they create is often exactly the same. Tonight's episode explores one of the most famous modern creepypasta creatures ever created, the Rake. Unlike traditional folklore passed down over centuries, the Rake emerged through internet horror culture, message boards, altered documents, and fictional eyewitness accounts. Yet despite its relatively recent popularity, many people insist they experienced something similar long before they ever heard the creature's name. And honestly, that may be what makes the Rake so unsettling. It feels familiar. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're a returning listener, it's always good to have you back. To all my witches and wanderers, thank you for being here and continuing to support the show. Every listen, every rating, every comment, and every shared episode helps keep this strange little corner of storytelling alive. I truly appreciate every one of you spending your time here with me. Before we begin, just a quick reminder. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment sharing your thoughts and theories. And if you're listening on Spotify, please take a moment to rate the show. You can listen to the Morbid Witch Podcast on Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Pandora. Now, let's step into one of the internet's darkest modern legends. The Rake became widely known during the late 2000s through internet horror forums and creepypasta communities. Unlike ancient folklore creatures rooted in oral tradition, the Rake was deliberately built through collaborative storytelling. Anonymous users posted fabricated witness accounts, fake news clippings, journal entries, and supposed historical references designed to make the creature feel real. And it worked. The legend spread rapidly because storytelling blurred fiction and reality together extremely effectively. The Rake was presented almost like an urban legend under active investigation rather than a clearly fictional monster. Readers were encouraged to connect scattered reports and decide for themselves whether the creature existed. Part of the creature's popularity came from timing. Internet horror during the late 2000s thrived on ambiguity. Stories felt more frightening when presented as discovered documents, leaked reports, and archived testimony. The Rake fit perfectly into that format because its design tapped into several deeply primal fears at once. Fear of intrusion, fear of sleeplessness, fear of being watched, and perhaps most importantly, fear of finding something standing silently beside your bed at night. The creature's appearance also played a huge role in its success. Unlike elaborate monsters filled with supernatural imagery, the Rake remained disturbingly simple. Pale skin, long claws, emaciated limbs, human-like eyes. The simplicity made it easier for audiences to imagine encountering one in real life. Once people started imagining it, the legend grew beyond the internet itself. Descriptions of the Rake remain surprisingly consistent across stories. Witnesses usually describe it as a humanoid creature with pale or gray skin stretched tightly over a thin body. It appears hairless, almost sickly, with elongated limbs and oversized claws capable of slicing through flesh with horrifying ease. Its movement is often described as animalistic. It crawls on all fours, sometimes slowly, sometimes impossibly fast. Many witnesses compare it to a large hairless dog combined with a human being. Others describe it as skeletal or corpse-like. The eyes are usually sunken and reflective, while the mouth appears unnaturally wide. Some stories claim the creature smiles. Others insist its face barely moves at all. Its claws are central to the mythology. According to reports, the Rake attacks sleeping victims by lacerating them with enormous, sharp nails. Survivors often describe waking up to the creature crouched at the foot of the bed before it lunges forward violently. But the physical attacks are only part of what makes the Rake terrifying, because many stories claim it speaks. The creature supposedly whispers in soft, horrifying voices during encounters. Sometimes it repeats personal phrases. Sometimes it asks strange questions. Sometimes it simply breathes beside victims while they remain frozen in terror. And in many stories, the psychological damage lasts far longer than the wounds. Although the Rake is modern internet folklore, creators of the legend attached it to fabricated historical accounts to deepen the mythology. One of the most famous examples involves the supposed mariner's log dated 1691. In the story, sailors encounter a pale creature aboard a ship during the night. Crew members disappear, and surviving witnesses describe a horrifying, humanoid figure moving silently through darkness. Whether fictional or not, maritime settings work extremely well for horror. Ships isolate people, dark oceans create vulnerability, and sleep deprivation combined with fear can make even ordinary shadows seem monstrous. As the legend evolved, people began associating the Rake with older folklore from different cultures. Pale, crawling humanoids appear in many traditions worldwide, often connected to wilderness spirits, nocturnal predators, or cursed beings. Some internet discussions began comparing the Rake to what modern folklore communities call flesh pedestrians. Unlike traditional depictions of skinwalkers, the phrase flesh pedestrian became popular online as a way of referencing unsettling shape-shifting entities without directly invoking specific indigenous spiritual traditions. Over time, internet horror culture merged these ideas together, creating an entire ecosystem of pale, humanoid cryptids. And because similar creatures appear across different cultures, the Rake started feeling older than it actually was, as though humanity had always feared something pale and hungry waiting in the dark. In October of 2017, a 26-year-old graduate student named Lena moved into a small apartment building near the edge of Portland, Oregon. The building was old but inexpensive, and she planned to stay there only temporarily while finishing her degree. At first, nothing seemed unusual except for how quiet the complex became at night. Too quiet. Neighbors rarely spoke, and several apartments always appeared empty, despite lights occasionally turning on inside them after midnight. A few weeks after moving in, Lena began waking around 3 in the morning every night. At first, she blamed stress, but eventually she realized something stranger was happening. Every time she woke up, she heard faint scratching sounds somewhere inside the apartment. Not outside, inside. At first, the scratching sounded distant, almost like rats inside the walls. But over several nights, the sound grew closer. It moved from the hallway to the kitchen, then eventually to her bedroom door. One night, Lena forced herself to stay awake after hearing the noise. Around 3:17 a.m., she saw her bedroom doorknob slowly turning. Then silence. Then the scratching stopped completely. She stared at the door for nearly 10 minutes before hearing something move quietly across the hallway floor outside. Not footsteps. Crawling. The following night, she awoke suddenly to the feeling that someone was crouched beside her bed. At first, she could not move. Her eyes adjusted slowly to the darkness. And there, kneeling beside the mattress, was a pale figure. Hairless, thin, its limbs bent wrong. Its eyes reflected faintly in the darkness, like an animal's. Lena later said the thing smiled at her. Not like a person, like something pretending to understand how humans smile. Then it whispered, "You looked at me." The creature placed one clawed hand against the mattress beside her face, before suddenly bolting from the room on all fours. Lena heard impossible speed moving through the apartment, before the front door slammed open violently. Police found nothing. No signs of forced entry. No footprints. But deep claw marks remained carved into the wooden floor beside her bed. Lena moved out 2 days later. And according to later tenants, the scratching still happened around 3 a.m. Before we continue, Witches and Wanderers, let's pause for just a moment. Thank you for being here and spending your time with the Morbid Witch Podcast. Whether you're listening beneath candlelight, driving through the dark, or trying very hard not to look towards your bedroom doorway right now, I truly appreciate every one of you. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment, sharing your favorite creepypastas or cryptids you'd like covered in future episodes. And if you're listening on Spotify, please take a moment to rate the show. You can listen to the Morbid Witch Podcast on Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Pandora. Now, let's return to the nightmare. The Rake succeeds as horror because it weaponizes vulnerability. Most encounters happen at night while victims are sleeping or half awake. This creates uncertainty about what is real and what may be hallucination. Many stories intentionally blur the line between paranormal experience, sleep paralysis, trauma, and psychological fear. Sleep paralysis itself likely contributed heavily to the creature's popularity. During episodes of sleep paralysis, people often awaken unable to move while sensing a terrifying presence nearby. Hallucinations frequently involve shadowy or humanoid figures standing near the bed. The Rake fits perfectly into those experiences. But the creature also taps into older evolutionary fears. Humans are instinctively disturbed by figures that appear almost human, but not fully human. Pale skin, elongated limbs, unnatural movement, and distorted facial expressions all trigger discomfort within the brain. Psychologists sometimes call this the uncanny valley effect. The Rake combines the discomfort with predatory behavior. It watches silently, it studies people, it invades safe spaces, and it attacks during sleep, the moment humans are most defenseless. That combination creates horror that feels deeply intimate. The Rake does not haunt castles or abandoned forests. It comes into your bedroom. Even though the Rake began as internet fiction, it has become one of the defining monsters of modern horror culture. The creature inspired films, games, artwork, online series, and countless personal encounter stories. Over time, many people stopped treating it purely as fiction and began discussing it almost like genuine paranormal folklore. That transformation is fascinating because folklore has always evolved through storytelling. The internet simply accelerated the process. The Rake also represents a new kind of monster for the digital age. Ancient myths spread through campfires and oral tradition. Urban legends spread through communities and newspapers. But creepypasta creatures spread globally within hours, evolving collaboratively as thousands of people contribute to the mythology at once. And despite its fictional origins, the fear feels real. That may be because the Rake ultimately symbolizes something ancient beneath all the internet aesthetics. Fear of being watched, fear of vulnerability, fear that something hostile exists just outside human perception. And tonight, after hearing this story, some listeners may find themselves waking up around 3 a.m, listening carefully, wondering if that sound in the hallway was always there. Thank you for listening to the Morbid Witch Podcast, and thank you to all my witches and wanderers for continuing to support the show. Every listen, every rating, every comment, and every share helps keep these stories alive. I truly appreciate each and every one of you spending your time here with me. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, make sure you're following the podcast on Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Pandora. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're listening on Spotify, please take a moment to rate the show. Until next time, stay strange, stay spooky, and remember, the shadows are always watching.